All
There,
right.
there we go. Don, it's all yours.
Okay. Um, Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. If you're like most business owners, your day is already filled with decisions about customers, employees, finances, and keeping your business running smoothly. Cybersecurity often feels like just one more complicated item in an already long to-do list. The good news is that protecting your business doesn't have to be complicated. Today, we're going to focus on four practical habits that can make your business much harder to attack. These aren't expensive enterprise solutions or highly technical projects. In fact, they're practical steps that most businesses can begin implementing right away. Rather than giving you a lecture, we've assembled a panel of cybersecurity professionals who work with businesses every day. I'll guide the discussion, ask the questions that many business owners have, and let our panel share and, um, their experience and practical advice along the way. Our goal is that when you leave today, you'll have a clear understanding of four practical steps you can take to better protect your business, starting this week. During our webinar, if you, the audience, have questions, please post them in the chat and we will answer them as soon as possible. We may have to answer some questions at the end because of relevance. Okay, I would like to introduce our panel. First up is Rick Myers. Rick is the founder and CEO of Caldera Cybersecurity Service and a CISSP and PCIP certified fractional CISO with more than 30 years of IT and cybersecurity experience. He advises executives and organizations on cybersecurity strategy, risk compliance, and incident preparedness with a focus on turning complex security challenges into practical business-focused solutions. Rick is also active in the community, providing cybersecurity education and support to small businesses and nonprofits. Next is Chris Portillo. Chris is a cybersecurity analyst at Caldera Cybersecurity, always learning and hoping to share tips from experience to better help protect you and your organization. Next is Cassie West. Cassie is the cybersecurity programs manager at Caldera Cybersecurity, where she leads cybersecurity programs and supports the company's web design and marketing initiatives. Cassie holds a CompTIA Security Plus certification and brings a unique blend of technical, creative, and business experience to her work. And I am your host, Donald Gardner. I hold a CompTIA Security Plus, Network Plus, and Amazon Web Services certified cloud practitioner. I've helped small businesses to secure their computer systems from hackers and ransomware attackers. So let's get started. Next, the reality. One of the biggest misconceptions we hear from small business owners is, why would anyone target my business? It's an understandable question. After all, most people assume cyber criminals are only interested in large corporations worth millions of dollars. The reality is quite different. Many cyber attacks aren't directed at a specific business. They're automated. Cyber criminals use software to scan the internet looking for easy opportunities, and they don't really care if you're a Fortune 500 companies or a local business with only a few employees. Okay, Rick, why have small businesses become such attractive targets for cyber criminals, and what are some of the misconceptions you hear most often from business owners?
Well, thanks, Don. And first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us on our webinar. We're going to be doing this on a quarterly basis, so but do feel free. This is conversational. Raise your hand, put something in chat, come off mute. Just have a conversation here. But Don, to answer your question more specifically, the first thing I'll start with is the misconceptions piece. Is that some small business owners, whether they're just one-man shops, they do lawn care, they're doing, accounting, whatever. They're just one man shop. They think they're too small. Well, that's not true. If you look at the statistic on the slide, where 43% of cybersecurity attacks attack small businesses, that's because it's a even chance. It's a 50-50 chance that you're going to be attacked today because Those who are cyber criminals are scanning the network, looking for an inroads into somebody's network. And so if they just happen to come across your PC sitting on the internet, they're going to attack you and see what they can get from that. So they don't know your size typically. They just know that there's an open door and they're going to, take advantage of that. So another reason why small businesses become attractive is because they usually have larger customers. So if the cyber criminal can attack you, then they're probably going to get access to your contact list, which is going to contain all of your customers. And those could be very large customers. And so then they send out malicious emails under your name to your customer, asking them to click on something which could contain malware. So they use you as a jumping point from your company to your larger customers, and that can be a very concerning event for you and for your customer as well.
Okay, on to the premise. We've just discussed why small businesses are increasingly being targeted. The next question is, what can I realistically do about it? The good news is that improving your security posture doesn't have to mean hiring an IT department or investing thousands of dollars in expensive technology. In fact, many of the most effective security measures are also some of the simplest. Today's discussion is focused on practical steps that any business owner can understand and begin implementing. They won't eliminate every risk, but they can significantly reduce the chances of your business becoming an easy target. Okay, next is the 4 security habits. We've discussed why small businesses are being targeted and why cybersecurity doesn't have to be overwhelming. Now let's look at 4 practical habits we'll be discussing today. As you look at this list, I don't want you to think, do I have to do all 4 of these tomorrow? That's not our goal. Our goal is to help you understand which 1 or 2 improvements will make the biggest difference for your business and give you a place to start. And next, our security practice number 1, turn on multi-factor authentication. The first habit we're going to discuss is multi-factor authentication, or MFA. It may sound technical, but the idea is actually very simple. Think of it as adding a second lock to your front door. Even if someone steals your password, they still need another way to prove they should have access to your account. For many businesses, this is one of the simplest and most effective steps they can take to reduce their risk. And Rick, can you please explain what multi-factor authentication is in plain English and why it's so effective and why it's one of the first security improvements you recommend to business owners?
Yep, I absolutely believe that this is the number one thing that you should be doing across all of your accounts. If you're dealing with a company that does not offer MFA or multi-factor authentication, then you need to step away and really consider your relationship with that customer, with that company. If your bank is not implemented MFA, which is very rare these days, you should be looking at a different bank. The easy way to explain multi-factor, and we've kind of alluded to this already, MFA is like needing 2 keys to unlock a door instead of just 1. Your password is your first key, and your MFA is a second way to prove you're really who you are. Usually something you have, sort of like your phone, or a security key, which you plug into the computer, or an application that you have on your phone, which receives another token that you can actually type in to prove that you are the person you are, saying you are. A password proves that you know something. MFA makes you prove you also have something. So if a criminal steals your password, they still can't easily get into your account because they don't have your phone, they don't have your security key, they don't have that application installed. A good example is when you go up to an ATM machine. Well, you need your card to plug in, but you also need the PIN number to access your account. That is a form of MFA. So just think of it this way. 3 things is a classic MFA is something you know, your password, something you have, a phone, an application, a smart card or security key, and something you are is your fingerprint, a face scan, or some other biometric indicator for you. A simple way to say this is MFA verifies using two things, two or more things, something you know, something you have, or something you are. Okay, thanks, Don.
Okay, now let's go on to not all factors are equal. Let's take a deeper dive into MFA. Now that we understand what multi-factor authentication is and why it's so effective, the next question is, does it matter which type of MFA I use? As you see here, not all methods provide the same level of protection. Some are more convenient, some are more secure, and the best choice often depends on your business and the systems you're protecting. Okay, back to our panel. Can someone please walk through us? Can someone please walk us through these different options and explain which ones you generally recommend for small business owners and why?
Yeah, sure, Don. I'll start. I'll start with the least secure MFA methods. And these are ranked in order. So email codes, okay, that's one of the first MFA types that have ever been out there. Where in you go to your bank and they will send you a code in email. You type in the 6 digits into their website and off you go. You're into your account. Well, that's not as secure as the other methods because, well, what happens if somebody has compromised your email account? And now they have access to any of the uh, MFA tokens that come in through email, and that could be lots of different accounts. So they can even scan your email looking for these codes to know which banks or which companies that you have MFA turned on for email, and they can trigger that. And in some cases, MFA is used for resetting your password. So you need to be very careful with email because that's probably the most compromised type of method for receiving a token. The second one is a text message. Well, albeit it is coming in on your phone, and that is secure because it's something you have, remember? And you can use that code to access your accounts, and that's great. But there has been a significant amount of what they call SIM swapping, where a cyber criminal can call your phone company, your telephone company like T-Mobile or AT&T, and socially engineer them to change the location of where that phone number is originating. So they can actually have your phone number assigned to one of their devices. And once they gain access to that, then they can generate MFA codes for everything that you own and have it sent to their phone instead of yours. So that makes text messaging more secure than email, but not as secure as the other methods. But I will say this, that email and SMS are not totally useless. It's much better than having nothing. So if you are working with a company that only offers email, text, email, MFA, then take it. That's great, but encourage them through chats and when you're talking to them to increase the security on their MFA. Okay. Okay. Move on.
Yeah, and
Okay,
hi, my name is Chris too. I just wanted to talk to you guys about the other ones as well. The specifically the Authenticator app, the push approval. Going back to the original point, not all MFA methods are provide the same level of protection. With an Authenticator app, instead of relying on an email or text message, the Authenticator app generates a code for you directly through the application, and that's on your phone or a device, whatever device is convenient for you. And examples of that you guys might already be using or at least heard of: Microsoft Authenticator, Google Authenticator. There's a lot of options out there for MFA for applications. The other method is push approval. Instead of typing a code, you receive a notification on your phone and asking you to approve or deny. Example of that is Google devices, whether you use it or not. Something usually if you're trying to log into your Google TV, for example, you could just push approval, approve or deny on the Google app if you have it. Of course, you have to have all these applications, but at the same time, an attacker could already have your username and password. They're basically standing at the front door. Going back to Rick's point, that it's two keys. It's just more way to have them, but don't become the person who opens the door for them. If you didn't initiate the login, don't approve it. That's really what I wanted to push as well. And if MFA isn't something MFA is also something you don't just turn on and forget about. You have to pay attention to it. If you didn't authenticate that request, you are don't approve it. It's that's something about the application apps as well that is very important.
Yep. Chris, I'll point out that one of the attack vectors that cyber criminals use is that they'll go to Google, for example, or even Microsoft, and they'll go to the lost password features of those services. And part of that process is for them to send an MFA code to your
Mm.
device or to your application. I constantly, every day, get these pop-ups from all over the world where people are trying to gain access to my account and change my password. You have to be very careful, as Chris is saying, be very careful to look to see if that is an MFA request that you have generated, not one that just pops up on your phone automatically. Hit deny and be very careful, because what the cyber criminal is hoping you do is just out of habit, you'll go ahead and accept it. And if you do, your password will be changed and you'll be locked out of your account probably within the next 30 seconds. So be very careful with those. Okay, thanks, Chris. I think Cassie's next.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes. I'm going to cover the strongest types of MFA that you can use for your business. And that's going to be hardware keys and biometrics. Biometrics, we're probably all a little bit more familiar with smartphones. Face ID, finger scanning, their computers with both of those features now. And then hardware keys, you're going to have a USB device, or you can have smart cards that will also require a password. Your hardware keys are going to be another example, like Rick was talking about, something that you have, and your biometrics are something that you are.
Very good.
Okay. Our next one is protect your email before anything else. We've discussed what multi-factor authentication is and the different ways you can use it. The next question is one that every business owner asks, where should I start? If you only remember one thing from today's discussion on MFA, remember this. Start with your email account. Your email is often the gateway to your business. It's where password resets are sent. It's connected to your financial accounts, and it's often the key to accessing many of your other business systems. Next, we have update and patch security practice number 2. Our second security practice is keeping your software up to date. I think we've all been tempted to click remind me later when the update pops up on our screen. It usually seems to happen at the worst possible time, such as in the middle of a presentation. And that's happened to me more than once. But updates aren't just about adding new features or fixing minor bugs. In many cases, they're fixing known security weaknesses, and cyber criminals are already trying to exploit. Okay, back to our panel. What advice would you give business owners who are tempted to click on remind me later?
Well, Don, I can say it's a balance. Like you said, you might be in the middle of a presentation, you might be in the middle of some really serious work that's due in the next 15 minutes for your boss or, for yourself. And I can understand that. The pop-up comes up and it says, hey, I need to reboot, excuse me, to apply these patches. Well, you can do it once, but keep it in mind how many times you're clicking that snooze button. Sort of like when you're getting up in the morning. I can only snooze twice and then I'm late. So you want to make sure that every time you're snoozing that pop-up to say apply these patches, you're elongating the risk that you have that someone could take advantage of your computer. So don't forget, do it once, maybe twice, but then let the system do its thing and reboot the system so that you can apply the patches. And it's extremely important these days. And I will add, in terms of AI, using, basically AI being used to find vulnerabilities within systems, it's very important to patch as often as you can, because the manufacturers such as Microsoft and Google are all really in a hurry now to patch everything they can. So there's more patches out there right now. That's going to be for the next year or so. So keep those patches going so that you can close down the vulnerabilities that AI can exploit within seconds.
Okay, a few more questions for our panel. What's the biggest misconception you hear about software updates?
Well, I'll raise my hand, Don. One of the biggest ones I've always heard is it will break something. A lot of bigger companies don't want to apply patches to their servers because everything's fine right now. Why would I patch it? It's going to open up another bug and I'm going to have problems. So that's a misconception about patches. Also, patches sometimes will appear as feature updates. That means they're just enhancing the features that you already have. That's not necessarily true. These could be security patches that necessarily close down holes and holes and vulnerabilities on your system. So go ahead and go ahead and do that patch.
Okay, another question for our panel. Which devices or systems should business owners make sure they're updating regularly?
Well, if you want to be pretty much patching everything: operating systems, computers, phones, browsers, any applications, servers, network equipment, anything that's supported a supported device or the software used for the business. That way, you make sure that those vulnerabilities don't affect your business. Essentially, that's what I wanted to add. And if there's
Okay,
anything,
another question for our panel. How long is too long to wait before installing a security update? Should you install it immediately?
Chris, did you want to answer?
yeah, well, sure. There's actually, well, there's not a single time frame for every update. But I think that the business should not necessarily delay important security patches because everything patches could be critical. There's critical security updates that should be prioritized, and that could be defined through patching, whether those vulnerabilities get essentially targeted or you don't know what kind of bug or what kind of malware could be exploited without sending these patches out. So it's kind of hard to say on a time frame, but it should be you should have critical, like you should have levels to what you should be paying attention to. Um, just kind of have a self-awareness, some sort of calendar, that there are patches that are more critical than others and that can have certain effects on your business and everyday business.
Yeah, I would give a rule of thumb,
Yeah.
some larger companies or if you have multiple devices within your household or within your business, why don't you patch one first and see if it has any negative effect? And if not, go ahead and patch the other devices as well. So I would say, take a conservative approach of patching. Just know that if you patch your most critical system, like your accounting system or your POS system, right away, well, if something does go wrong, then it could, have a negative effect on your day. So, but I would always patch one machine, and then if that goes okay after, a couple hours or maybe half a day, go ahead and patch everything else. The other things too is that these patches are tested by those who are writing that software, and they usually understand any type of problems it can cause out in the field. Plus, that's why you have support too. Call support if something happens, and have them help you through the rest of the upgrade process. Okay.
Yeah, thank you,
All
Rick.
right.
Yeah.
And our fourth question would seem to be obvious, but I don't really think it's so obvious. Are automatic updates a good idea for most small businesses? Rick, you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Yeah, sure. Yes, I think they are. On my desktop computers, I have automatic updates. I really don't want to have to go in and check on a regular basis. I know that they're coming out nearly, once a month from Microsoft. It's called Patch Tuesday. Those patches will be applied to my machines automatically. And when I turn on my laptop, it will go ahead and post to there. All I have to do is turn it on. I don't really have to think about it. There are other applications, though, that do require me to accept the patch so that I know that it's going to be updating it. So any place where you can turn on automatic updates, go ahead and do that. And like I said, if something happens, that's why you have support from the actual supplier of the software. You can back it out, and in some future slides, we're going to be talking about backups and why they're important.
All right, on to every patch closes a window of risk. We've all heard the phrase, I'll install that update later. The question is, what happens while you're waiting? Every software vulnerability creates an opportunity for attackers. Once a software company discovers a weakness, they develop and release a patch to fix it. But until that update is installed, that weakness is still there, and cyber criminals know it. This slide illustrates why timing matters. The sooner you apply a security update, the sooner you close that window of opportunity. And to our panel, should every update be installed immediately or some more critical than others?
Well, it kind of goes back to the point that I mentioned earlier, but not every update has the same urgency. Security and critical updates should be prioritized, obviously, and businesses should also distinguish the routine feature changes from important security patches, and manage them appropriately.
And the second one, what's the difference between a feature update and a security update?
Don, I'll take that one back. I kind of mentioned it earlier, that a feature update is usually an enhancement to the software itself. Giving you a new feature, new function, something cool, an enhancement that the software vendor is pushing out. That's great. And then so that's a feature update, but a security update is something that you may not see. It will affect a vulnerability that the software manufacturer has found, and they want to close that down, make it more secure. You won't necessarily see a change to the system, but you will have an inherently more secure platform once that update has been completed.
Okay, and third question, for businesses with very low IT resources, what's a practical way to stay on top of updates?
Well, a couple things is like we're all small businesses, right? And we all have a very busy day. And what I'd say is a practical way is the first thing that we've talked about is automatic updates for your desktops. Just turn that on, let Microsoft send the patches down and process them, on a regular basis. Another way of doing that is if you have a system like an accounting system or a POS system that's very critical to your business, why don't you put it on your calendar that once a month you're going to check to see if there's any pending updates that haven't been applied and plan for that to be updated, let's say over the weekend or late at night after you close. So you could take some manual intervention there just to protect your business operations. But I would definitely try to employ automatic updates as often as you can.
Okay, and Rick, if you want to continue, did you want to talk about a recent incident about that you were aware of?
Oh yes, absolutely. And then we have a couple questions in the chat that we'll get to in a second. The incident that I was involved in had to do with a piece of hardware. It's called a firewall. The firewall is truly one of your only protections between you and the internet. And so what happened with this one client is that they actually took this firewall over from another company who was maintaining it, and they moved it into their environment. But what they hadn't realized was that the patches that were applied to it while it was over in the original the original provider's network, they had applied patches, but when it moved over to the new environment, those patches were removed. And so what happened very quickly is that somebody scanned their firewall, saw that they had a vulnerability that hadn't been patched. And guess what? They got into the firewall, they compromised an account, and they didn't get much further than that because they employed security at depth. But they were able to penetrate the firewall, and that became a very scary situation. So that company had to change all passwords in the systems, not only the user passwords, but the system passwords. They had to patch that firewall. They had to go back through and discover that they didn't have a good process around patching. And so now they're improving that process, which is great. But they could have avoided that by employing it from the very beginning. When they put a new device in, make sure you run those security updates before you step away from that new laptop or new device in your network. Okay. So let's go to the chat area. It says Veronica's asking, how would one identify security update from feature update, especially on Microsoft machines? Does Microsoft actually identify these updates? Well, by name, they do. So if you go into Windows updates, you'll see what's pending. And you'll usually see things like security updates, where they're patching the security platform, or it might be an update to, 365, Teams, Outlook. That would be prevalent within the name of the actual feature itself. But with Windows, I always let it patch everything, and I like to keep up with features. So I don't really discriminate. I let it go ahead and update my features because Teams is changing constantly, Outlook is changing constantly. Go ahead and let them do those feature updates and embedded in there their security updates as well. And Will's asking, I think it was Rick who mentioned that every day he gets attacks from all over the world. I'm surprised to hear that. In what form do they arrive? How do you recognize an attack, or is it just your security software notifying you? Well, let me tell you about one that constantly hits me, and it was pretty prevalent for quite a while. I was getting a phone call on my phone, and the caller ID came up as Google support. And when I answered the call, it would be somebody over on the other side of the phone saying that they were Google security and they saw something suspicious on my account and they were there to help me. Well, first of all, the what thing I can recognize is Google doesn't call anybody. They don't have support. They're too big. Have you ever gotten a phone call from Facebook, Google, Microsoft there to help you with your individual issue? No, they don't do that. But that was a scam that was probably calling me almost every day. Now they've automated that. Now they have an automated attendant calling and saying, "This is Google support. We would like you to call back and call us now." And so I don't, those are just social engineering. They're trying to get you to do something, and these companies do not have the support or the resources to call out and do that. Another one is where I see it on my phone as well. I will get the pop-ups for MFA, and my Google Authenticator will pop up saying, you need to authenticate, and I look at the country that it's coming from, and it's in Europe or Middle East Asia or somewhere else, or even somewhere in the United States where I don't live, and so I immediately deny those. So you have to look and see, and don't just accept this, and always I always take the approach of assuming that it's an attack. And so I just take it that approach. The other thing I say to people when they're getting these phone calls or when they're getting these emails or they're getting something popping up, take a breath, take 7 seconds to look at that very closely and make sure you understand what you're clicking or doing on the system. And in any case, I never really open up any attachments. That's a whole phishing story that we can do in another webinar, but protect yourself from these attacks that just come in.
You
Okay.
also notice a lot of urgency in these messages. There'll be a lot of urgency. There'll be misspelling. You'll notice there's a lot of stuff like that too.
Okay. All right.
You'll get spam, just to add on to what Chris was saying, you'll see a lot of invoices, and something that small businesses need to be wary of is when your email can get compromised. A lot of attackers will send out malicious links and attachments to your customers to compromise their systems. The realtor that sold my last house actually just had her email compromised, and she's sending out invoices to everyone with malicious links right now.
And Rick, continuing on that, didn't you just get an email about emergency? Please send me your phone number.
Uh, Say that again.
Yeah, I think didn't you, I think you got an email about emergency. Please send me your phone number.
Oh, yeah, I think so. That was actually generated as a spoof email coming over to me. And so that was again a sense of urgency, and I ignored it. And then I called the original person, which I think it was you, Don, that you sent that over. So you want to be careful about making sure your account is not being used by somebody else. And people can spoof emails, and something that people don't know is that phone numbers can be spoofed quite easily. They can make that caller ID say pretty much anything that they want it to. So in those cases, they're going to make it look like your bank, the FBI, the police, anything. So unfortunately, in this world, you can't believe anything. So that's why I always say take that 7 seconds, calm down, read what it's asking you, and if it's anything suspicious, don't touch it.
Yeah. All right, let's continue with our security update. Practice number 2, turn on automatic updates. We've discussed why software updates are important. The next question is, how do I make sure they actually get done? The easiest answer is to automate as much as possible. The less you have to remember, the less likely something important gets overlooked. Automatic updates help make cybersecurity part of your normal business routine instead of another task on your to-do list. This slide highlights the systems that business owners should pay the most attention to, from operating systems, computers and phones, to the software and network equipment that they rely on every day. And to our panel, do you recommend leaving automatic updates turned on for most businesses? Rick, you want to take that?
Yeah, and we've kind of dug this one down. I mean, we have said this a couple of times already, so I'll just answer it real quickly. Is yes, I recommend leaving those automatic updates turned on. Just go to Windows Updates. You'll see it, in the on that page where it says, apply the patches as soon as they come out. Go ahead and do that. That's probably the smartest thing you can do for your desktop computers.
Okay, second, which business devices or applications do people most often forget to update? I forget to update my phone.
Yep. Don, you stole my example, the phone.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. They will come in. Sometimes people don't have it turned on to auto apply, or the T-Mobile or AT&T hasn't turned that on, but always apply patches to your phone, because that will stop malicious actors from sending you text messages perhaps that may contain some malicious code in it and taking over your phone. There's all sorts of things that are getting patched in the back end to prevent external parties from gaining access into your phone, your credit cards that you may store, your operating system to listen to you, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and for what happens to me on Windows 11, and if I do not update and shut down or update and restart, it gets really obnoxious because it'll turn on at 2 o'clock in the morning to remind me. So I have to do it.
Yeah.
And third, how do you know when it's time to replace software or equipment?
I would say it's when the provider stops sending you security updates. They will also tell you that the equipment has been retired and it's no longer being supported. That's a good indicator that says, okay, if I got a critical application running on this computer, maybe it's Windows 7 or Windows 10, then I need to figure out how to get that application over to a later, more modern application, more modern OS. So take that as a cue when the manufacturer, I'm talking the software vendors, are saying to you, we're no longer supporting this. It's being retired. That's not just a free ticket to continue to use it forever. You should consider getting it moved right away.
All right, we are on to security habit number 3, back up your data. So far, we've discussed ways to reduce the chances of an attack succeeding, but good business planning also means being prepared for the unexpected. Even with strong security, things can still happen. A computer can fail, someone can accidentally delete an important file, a laptop can be stolen, or a business can become the victim of ransomware. And by the way, when I talk with people about ransomware, about half of them know what it is, the other half have no clue. That's where backups come in. Think of a backup as your business's safety net. It's what helps you recover and get back to serving your customers when something goes wrong. And for our panel, many business owners assume their files are automatically backed up because they're using cloud services. Is that always true?
I
Rick,
have
you
to,
want to take that?
yep, I have to, it's a big misconception. In Microsoft, if anybody's out there using Microsoft, 365 or Google Workspace, I would say that the cloud providers provide you a copy of your data. So, for example, if you delete something, it goes into what they call a recycle bin or your waste basket, and then it sits there for a little while, and then it migrates off to another waste basket for maybe another 90 days. So, in the worst case, you can reclaim something from the recycle bin and pull it back to recover it, but that is not a backup. That is only a quick and easy copy and and restore process. Backups actually take this and move it to other backup sources or other types of media outside the cloud. It may move it to a hard drive. It may move it to some sort of other cloud storage away from that software vendor like Microsoft, moves it to somewhere else. So what I say is, take what they say is basically saying they're making a copy of the data for you, but they're not doing a backup for you. And Carly's asking, what software do you recommend for a C drive backup or a system backup? There's several products out there. Backblaze is one that I recommend. Dropsuite is another one that will back up your data and make sure that, we'll talk about this in the next slide when we talk about the 3-2-1 backup. But you really either get it off of your desktop computer onto a USB drive where you can disconnect it and take it home with you, or you move it somewhere else into a cloud service that is separate from the main service that you're doing. So Backblaze, Dropsuite, there's probably a couple other ones that are out there, but I recommend Backblaze.
Okay, question number 2. How often should a business be backing up its important data?
Now, my answer might sound a little smart alecky, but you back it up as often as you're willing to lose the data in between backups. Okay. So if your data is not very volatile, like it's records from last year, then make a backup and keep it. If it's something that's volatile, like your POS system or your accounting system that is constantly being used, you may want to back it up every day. So the worst case is you would lose 1 day's worth of data if you had to restore it, or up to 1 day, okay, up to that last backup. So based on the criticality of the system, that's how often you back it up. Email, things like that do have some sort of replicated copy, the recycle bin, you may only back that up once a week, and then, move on from there. You don't have to back that up as critical. But systems that will take you out of business need to be backed up on a very, very regular basis.
Okay, and then here is the third one. What's the biggest mistake you see businesses make when it comes to backups? That should be a really interesting one.
What's the rest of the panel say? Chris, what do you think?
Well, let me see. I think having backups but never testing whether they can automatically restore is usable data. That's something that you need to pay attention to. There's no kind of going back to the question that was asked earlier. There's no cloud storage can be, or it doesn't synchronize automatically. So I kind of thinking along those lines a little bit.
I think the number one thing you said there, Chris, was a backup is not a backup without being tested.
Exactly.
Make sure you restore something, you know how it works. If there's several steps involved in terms of the restoral process, write it down. The worst time for you to try to figure that out is when your system's down and your business is being impacted, and you have to remember, well, what were the steps I had to do to recover this? Go ahead and write it down so that in the worst situation, you have the instructions in front of you. Oh, and Carly's asking, well, how do you test it? That is simple as let it do a backup. Like for example, if you're going to back up your C drive on your computer, go ahead and let the backup occur, and then pick a file off of the backup and ask it to do a restore. And usually these software packages will let you restore it to the original location or to another location. And if you don't want to overwrite the first file, that you're restoring to. Just have it back up to /temp or to somewhere else on your hard drive and see that the two files are equivalent, or at least that's what you expect to have in that file based on that backup date. So just do a one file recovery. And if you really want to, okay, this is the most, thorough, is to go ahead and back up the whole computer and then restore the whole computer. And it should come back to exactly where you were at. Okay.
Okay, on to the three,
Good
two,
point,
one
Will. Good
backup
point,
rule.
Will. To a test machine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Don.
Yeah. On to the 3-2-1 backup rule. On the last slide, we talked about why backups are important. The next question is, what does a good backup actually look like? First of all, one backup isn't always enough. If it's stored on the same computer or even in the same office, it could be lost to ransomware, theft, fire, or hardware failure right along with your original data. This slide introduces a simple approach that helps protect against those different risks by keeping your data in more than one place. Okay, Rick, could you explain the 3-2-1 backup method?
Yeah, I got like one sentence for you, Don. It's like keep 3 copies of your data on 2 different types of storage with 1 copy kept somewhere else. That's the 3-2-1. 3 copies of the backup. 2 of them will be on 2 different types of storage. One could be a USB, another one could be cloud storage, and then 1 copy kept somewhere else. And that could be in cloud storage, and that could count as well. So just use that formula, 3-2-1. Okay. And it's important to remember that documents only exist in the file that for files that only exist in your office. A fire could destroy everything in your office. So that's why you want to move it somewhere else off-site. So take that USB drive, back up your computer, and then bring that home with you and put it into the safe. That's one good easy approach. Another one would be to have a cloud service that you can back up and it moves it up into the cloud. That covers both the off-site mode and then the separate type of media storage as well.
And to our panel, many businesses use Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace. Does that mean their data is already backed up? Chris, you want
Not
to try that one?
necessarily. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's already backed up. Using a cloud productivity platform doesn't automatically mean that the business's complete independent backup strategy. It kind of just goes back to what Rick was talking about earlier. The business should verify retention, recovery, and versioning. And what happens if that data is deleted or compromised? I mean, it needs to be tested.
Okay, and let's see here.
I-
Another question?
Yeah, we did have a
Yes.
question. We did have a question in the chat, and it's from Carly.
Okay.
How secure is cloud backup? Are they training AI on it? I would say always read the terms and services from the cloud provider, but I can tell you the bigger ones don't train your system. It will be in their terms of service, but the big ones like Microsoft and Google, they do have some responsibility of keeping your data separate and as well as private. A lot of times your backup systems will encrypt your data at rest, so they don't even have access to it. And they will tell you that if you set a password on your backup when you're actually doing your backups, they won't be able to get into it. And if you lose your password, then you will not be able to recover that data. It is stored very much away from their prying eyes. So, and then as for the training of AI on it, again, I go back to read the terms of service, make sure that, if you're storing somewhere where it's free, then I would suspect, what are they doing? Nothing's free in this world. So what are they doing with your data? So be very careful with that. But most cases, legitimate companies are not training AI on your personal data without violating their T's and C's and privacy statements.
Okay, next, second question. Why is it important to keep one backup somewhere other than your office?
Again,
Actually, I've got a real good example for that, if you don't mind, Rick.
no, go ahead.
I used to work at a newspaper, and that newspaper owned a radio station as well. And we kept backups for each at the respective opposite office location. One was down the street and up on a hill. And it became very fortunate that we stored backup somewhere else because the newspaper office location actually, not a fire, experienced a flood in the middle of the desert. So it was good that we had all of that stored somewhere else. Fortunately, the computers weren't impacted, but that could have easily become an issue if they hadn't been stored somewhere else.
Yep, very good. And to go along with that, I want to introduce another concept, and I just put it in chat for the audience, is the concept of immutability. And what immutability means is that if you store a backup or anything, it cannot be changed by anyone. It can't be deleted. So in ransomware attacks, what they do is, of course, they're trying to encrypt your data. Secondly, they're trying to extort you so that they don't release your data to the public. And thirdly, the way they put leverage on top of you is that they will basically encrypt your data. They will find everywhere that you've stored a backup and they will delete those backups. Now you're in a very bad situation. But if you've stored your data in somewhere where they call it immutable, meaning that nobody, including yourself, can ask for that data to be deleted, it's just there forever. And so even someone who has is doing, performing ransomware in your company, they won't be able to get to it. So it's sort of like the emergency break glass environment where you go in and you can restore that data, but you can't ever delete that data. And then, okay, Carly's asking, well, how do you make it immutable? And that's basically on the services that are offered. Backblaze offers it. A lot of the companies now are providing that immutable service. But I would ask them in particular, is the data that I'm storing, my backups, immutable? And they may have a setting that you have to place on it, like a little check mark in your account to say, hey, I'm making these immutable. I can't ever delete them, or they do it automatically for you. Remember, they're stored encrypted anyway, so they are safe and secure, but that immutability prevents someone from deleting them underneath you. Okay.
Okay. Now, this last question, I think we've already answered, but let's see. The slide mentions an offline copy. Why is disconnecting one backup so important when it comes to ransomware? Did we answer that before, or should we move on?
We just answered that.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. Okay. And a backup you've never tested isn't a backup yet. We've discussed what a good backup strategy looks like, but having backups is only half the solution. The real question is, will they work when you need them? A backup is a lot like an insurance policy. You hope you'll never need it, but if the day comes, you want to know it will do what it's supposed to do. That's why it's important to not only automate your backups, but also test them occasionally and keep at least one copy protected from ransomware. For our panel, what are the biggest mistakes you see businesses make with backups? I think we also answered that one too.
Yes, we did. Backups, if you haven't tested them, you don't have a backup because you don't have a restore. And then
Yeah.
write down the instructions for the restoral process.
Yeah, write down the instructions for the restoral process, because one thing that's been scientifically proven is panic doesn't work. When you're trying to restore this in the middle of a fire and you go into a panic, that doesn't work very well.
Right.
How often should a business test that it can restore files from a backup? I think we've answered that.
Well, I think it should be on a regular basis because let's say you set up a backup routine, you back up your data, you do a good job of doing that test restore, and you're satisfied, you have the instructions written down, you're good. Something could change along the way. So I would suggest, just depending on how large you are, do it every 6 months. Have a practice. You could even set up, when I came from Florida, we had hurricane season. So we would practice all the restorals right before hurricane season would start, and make sure that we could access our backups. Nothing's changed. The procedure is still in place. We would do a test restore at least every year, but we would try to do it every 6 months.
And what's the simplest way for a business owner to verify that a backup is actually working? I think we've been through
Covered.
a little bit of that.
Yep, we covered that as well. Restore.
Okay. Okay. And let's see here. Rick, have you seen situations where a business thought they had a good backup only to discover it didn't work?
Yeah, and I think I've encountered that as well myself in the early days, where I had a a system that was pretty important to me. I had a backup that was running, but when I had a failure, that's when I said, "Well, I haven't restored this. Let's see how I can do it." And it kind of made me pretty nervous about, going through the process and learning how to restore something because I hadn't practiced it. So I changed that around very quickly. And so now whenever I do a backup on a system, I'm also doing the restore. The other thing I'd mention too is that there's usually some sort of management portal, some admin portal from a from a service provider who's doing your backups for you. Log into that portal on a regular basis, and more so than every 6 months, but maybe once a week, and make sure your backups are running and backing up the things that you expect to be backing up. The worst thing that could happen is that you get to a situation and you say, "Oh, well, it's in the backups." And you go to the backup and look at the catalog and you say, "Oh, that was a new application or a new file folder, and I never changed the configuration to back it up." Now you're in a situation where you have a data loss.
Okay, let's go on to security practice number 4. Limit limit administrator access. We've discussed how to protect your accounts, your systems, and your data. Our final security habit is about limiting access to your most important business systems. Not everyone in a business needs the keys for every door. The more people who have full control over your systems, the greater the risk of fraud or theft if one of those accounts is compromised or even used by mistake. The goal isn't to make it harder for people to do their jobs, it's to make sure each person has the level of access they need and no more. So, to our panel, what's the biggest mistake you see businesses make when assigning administrator access? Rick, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think it's giving them too much access. Like if they don't need the, I'll give you some examples in Microsoft 365. They have a thing called Global Administrator. That's like the godlike administrator over the entire application set in Microsoft. If someone only needs to have access to, say, let's say the security portal, like they're part of the security team, well, just make them a security administrator and it gives them access to everything within the system that's security related. And they don't need global administrator, which has much more capabilities than the security administrator account does. So a lot of times people will struggle with creating these more discrete type of explicit permissions within systems. So what they do is like, "Oh, I just give up. I'm just going to give him global administrator and let him go ahead and do his job. We'll figure it out later." Well, unfortunately, later never comes. And so when that happens, someone's walking around with global administrator when they only needed the security administrator role. So I know that it's just I got to get my job done. Let me go ahead and give him large permissions, let him get his job done. But you have to go back around and remove that permission and really get to that discrete level of permissioning for that individual to do their daily job. Okay, so that's one of the biggest things I see. It's just too much is given out and never pulled back when you have time.
Okay. How are we doing on time? We're coming up to the top of the hour.
Yep.
Okay, and how many administrator accounts should a typical small business have?
I would make this real quick because I know we're running out of time.
Yeah.
But I think everybody should have, if you're an administrator, you own a small Office 365 account or Google account, have two accounts. One that has the super admin rights that you need, okay, ever so often. And then another one which is regular permissions for you to check your email or to write to your Google Drive or whatnot. It's just a regular user account. So you have two. One has elevated privileges and the other one's a regular user ID. Always use the regular user ID, one that has lesser permissions. In case you make a mistake, you won't have the permission to do something, right? Unless you've elevated. So, and when you're elevated, you kind of have that knowledge that you're playing with very heavy permissions and you could do a lot of damage. So, just have two accounts.
And on to the next, most people don't need administrator privileges. On the last slide, we discussed limiting administrator access. Let's emphasize this least privilege concept we just talked about. The idea is straightforward. People should have the access they need to do their jobs, but no more. Just because someone can be given administrative privileges doesn't mean they should have them. Limiting those high-level privileges reduces the chances that a mistake, stolen password, or some random event could affect your entire business. And the one question we have here that I think we've already answered is, should business owners use an administrator account for everyday work?
Yeah, the answer is no. Have a separate account that's just regular permissions on it so that you can just read your email, do your daily business, and you would elevate to the other account, log into that one to do things like adding users, deleting data, doing things like that from that one account. Then log out, log back into your regular account.
Okay. Okay, next, don't hand out admin like it's candy. On the last slide, we discussed the principle of least privilege, the idea that people should have the access they need to do their jobs, but no more. This slide takes that principle and turns it into 4 practical habits that every business can follow. The good news is that none of these recommendations require expensive software or a large IT department. They're simply good business practices that help reduce risk by limiting who has access to your most important systems and by regularly reviewing that access. I'll turn it over to our panel to walk through these 4 rules and explain how business owners can put them into practice.
Yeah, Don, just again, in lieu of time, let's go over these just really quickly. We've talked about it, 2 accounts, not one. We've emphasized that. If you have a logon, don't share it with anybody else. You want to have accountability of who's using the account. And so if you need a separate account for somebody, create it and let them have their own permissions so that you know who did what within your systems. Remove that access fast. If somebody leaves the company, remove it as quickly as possible because you don't want anybody external to have access to your critical internal data. And then every 6 months, I would recommend to look at your users and seeing what permissions they have and adjust them accordingly.
Okay, next, 4 habits. Start them this week. Over the past few slides, we've discussed 4 simple habits that can dramatically reduce cyber risk for most small businesses. The good news is that none of them require a large budget or a full-time IT department. The important thing isn't to tackle everything at once. The important thing is to get started. Every step you take, whether it's turning on multi-factor authentication, enabling automatic updates, improving your backups, or limiting administrator access, makes your business more secure than it was yesterday. I'll turn it back to our panel to recap these 4 habits and share where they recommend business owners begin this week.
Yeah, I'll make a couple of quick comments on this one. As we've talked about MFA, I think that's number 1. If anything, start today, go through all your bank accounts and all your other critical accounts and make sure you have MFA turned on. The other thing I would recommend, we haven't really talked about that in terms of passwords, but make sure you have a different password for every system. So if one password got compromised, someone can't go in and start stuffing your password into other accounts to see if that one works. So use a different password everywhere and use MFA everywhere. Second one is turn on automatic updates everywhere you can on critical systems. Take a little bit more of a conservative approach to make sure you're monitoring at least once a week. And then backing up your data is probably the one that costs money because storage is not free. So that's the one that would cost you some money just to back up your data. But from what it costs will save you in the long run when you have to do that restore. And believe me, one day you'll have to do a restore. And then finally, limit that admin access just to lower the overall risk that you have on your systems, making sure people only have the permissions that they need to do their job. Okay, and you won't regret that.
And finally, we're closing. As we wrap up today, I hope you leave with one important message. Cybersecurity doesn't have to be overwhelming. We've discussed 4 simple habits that can dramatically reduce cyber risk for most small businesses. You don't have to implement everything tomorrow, and you don't need to become a cybersecurity expert. Just pick one area, take the first step, and build from there. Small improvements made consistently can make a big difference over time. If today's discussion raised questions about your own business, we'd love to continue the conversation. That's why Caldera offers a free coffee break, a relaxed, no pressure conversation where you can ask questions, discuss your specific situation, and learn where it makes the most sense to begin. Please scan the QR code on the screen to schedule a time that works for you. If anyone in the audience has any more questions, please put them in the chat.
Yeah, but Don, I'd also say to come off mute, ask a question. We love a conversation. So if you have anything at all that you'd like to discuss, feel free to open up your audio and come online, and maybe everybody would appreciate that. If not, you want to talk privately, like Don said, scan the QR code. That invite comes directly to me. You'll see my calendar. You can schedule 30 minutes, and I'll answer whatever questions I can for you.
Okay, it looks like we can finish here. So thank you all for spending part of your day with us. We appreciate your time. We hope you found today's discussion valuable, and we wish you continued success in your future business.